A story from China to give you hope. Many people are talking about the coronavirus like it's the end of the world. Yesterday, the team I work with at my 9-to-5 job got together for a Zoom call. The purpose of the call was to reconnect and talk about what each person was working on. The call quickly got hijacked. It felt like so long since each of us had spoken to one another. Several people in the team became fascinated with what each other looked like on video. It was as if they had seen an alien from Mars for the first time. As the call went on, each of us explained our version of living through a pandemic. The minutes passed and it felt as though the light was getting darker and darker. The situation felt overwhelming. All anybody could talk about was the downsides of a global crisis. With only a few minutes left in the meeting, our leader asked one question: any last words before we jump off the call? Each of us got a chance to say something. I decided to talk about life after Corona. In early January, the coronavirus started out in China. The timing was terrible as my girlfriend had just left to go home to China and see her family. It was supposed to be Chinese New Year, which is a happy time. Within a short space of time, news of the virus and its harsh reality spread. Every family gathering was cancelled and all anybody could talk about was the virus. Isolation happened quickly in China and my girlfriend couldn't leave her family's apartment. My girlfriend described the pandemic in a few short words: there is no joy. What was supposed to be a few weeks in China and a relaxing plane ride home became complicated. Flights were cancelled all throughout China and the chance of being able to return home became unlikely as the days passed. We'd have a video call each night and talk about what was going to happen. Even if she did make it home, the complicated situation of her isolating for 14 days became a reality. At the time, isolating wasn't the norm outside of China. I rang the government health department for advice and they didn't really know what to do. The flight home was incredibly difficult. The plane was packed and nobody knew whether they would land and be allowed back into Australia. The in-flight food wasn't available and bottled water and prepackaged snacks were the only options. Each passenger wore a raincoat, mask, and gloves. There was no joy on the plane either. Everybody was afraid and acted like each person was a risk to their way of life. When the plane landed in Melbourne, airline workers boarded the aircraft in white suits and masks to inspect the plane. The passengers were held up in the airport for a few hours as a precaution. Coming from China made you an instant health risk. The passengers were checked thoroughly and the luggage took forever to be processed in case the virus was on one of the suitcases. Eventually, everybody was released and allowed to go home and self-isolate if they decided to. So what did we do in our home? We exercised extreme caution and split the apartment in two. I slept on an inflatable mattress for 14 days and basically didn't leave my little home office. We had to learn how to wash our hands properly, use gloves, wipe down surfaces with alcohol, wash dishes in the bathroom, and live in isolation. By the end of the 14 days, we believed in the idea of life after the coronavirus. We thought it was all over and went back to our normal lives. Every week we would chat to her parents back in China and they would tell us just how hard the coronavirus was on them. They couldn't leave their apartment other than to go to the supermarket or seek medical attention, and there were volunteers from the Communist Party of China to guard the entrances to apartment buildings in their city. Everybody was tracked and nobody was out and about. We would hear the stories from her parents and think that they were living in some alternate world. We were just glad to be in Australia away from all the madness. We lived in ignorant bliss that the coronavirus was a China thing. By the time March came around, it was clear that the pandemic was not a China thing. It started to affect every country's way of life. All the measures that had taken place in China became a precursor for our new way of life in Australia. Like a bad nightmare, my girlfriend and I had to live through the effects of the coronavirus all over again. This time we were seasoned experts. Friends and family would call me and ask for advice. How did you keep your things separate? How did you open door handles? There were many questions that I could provide insight on, having learned the hard way. The conversation back in China changed though. Last week we spoke with my girlfriend's parents and their situation had transformed. Soon yesterday's phone call with my team from work, I decided to share what my girlfriend's parents shared with us. To end the video call on a high, I wanted to show that there is hope and it might help you right now. Her parents told us that most people have returned to work in China. They are able to leave their homes again and wander around as they choose. The shopping centers have reopened. You can go to the supermarket again and enter the store in groups of 10 people at a time. As you walk through the shopping center, you can expect to have your temperature checked several times to ensure you don't have the virus. It's an inconvenience, but nobody resists going back to isolation as something no Chinese citizen wants to endure if they can avoid it. The streets outside are full of life again. People are going about their day as if the virus didn't exist. The playgrounds have children playing, businessmen and businesswomen are on their way to work in a hurry, entertainment after work is still the same escape it once was. The most important difference, according to her parents, is the temporary hospitals that once treated victims of the coronavirus are being packed away. Talking with her parents helped me see that there is life after the coronavirus. There is a world we can return to that feels somewhat normal. All we have to do is be patient, wash our hands, stay home, and we too can experience life after the coronavirus like my girlfriend's parents are now enjoying in China.